Good morning. My name is Carla Torres. I work in Department of Nutrition at Montefiore Medical Center. I live with my daughter Bella, my parents, my brother, and his family in the South Bronx. I'm here to talk to you today of what it feels like when your daughter says hippopotamus for the first time. Because that's what pre-K for all means to me. Before pre-K, Bella was shy. Before pre-K, it was hard teaching her things. Now that she's in pre-K, she's confident. Now that she's in pre-K, Bella knows the alphabets and she could write it by herself. Now she comes home and she uses the word hippopotamus. Before pre-K, I was spending around $1,400 a month for daycare. Now that Bella's in pre-K, I can do more to help my parents with the household expenses. And also there's even a little left over to take Bella to the museum or the zoo. Pre-K for All has given Bella an amazing start at life. She has her ABCs, her 1, 2, 3, and she's ready to move forward. Bella says she wants to be a doctor or a teacher when she grows up. I feel like she could achieve her dreams, and I'm proud and happy to be there every first step that she makes. I want to thank everyone at PS1, where Bella goes to school here, especially her teachers, Ms. Moreira, Ms. Rivera, and Ms. Aldea. I also want to thank the next speaker, Mr. Mayor de Blasio, who fought for us and Bella and every 4-year-old to make this possible.
Please. Carla, thank you so much for telling your story. Congratulations that Bella is doing so well and that she has such wonderful dreams for her future. Thank you. And I know you're going to help her achieve those dreams. And this is a story I hear all over this city from parents, what pre-K has meant for them, what it's meant to have their children getting that strong start. It's something that's truly universal in the city. When you talk to parents of every neighborhood, every background, every income level, you hear a very, very similar story about what they're experiencing with their children, how their children are growing and strengthening before their eyes, and what it means for their family, and what it means for their ability to make ends meet. Because as you heard, pre-K, now that it's free, has lifted a burden off of so many families that struggle. Well, as the video indicated, we're only just getting started. And it's time to do more. It's time to go farther. The first part of the mission has succeeded, but there's more to do if we're going to reach all our children the way we need to. And I want to speak to you as a parent, because as a parent, I understand why this has to be a matter of urgency. Every child needs to be reached. Every child needs the strongest possible start. We have proven, there's a strong start right there, strong voice. We have proven through the growth of pre-K that it can be done, and it can be done quickly. We have proven that can reach every child. And the evidence is already overwhelming of the impact it's making on children and their families and their schools and the future of the city. But it's time to go farther. It's time to reach children earlier. Because we know if we reach them even earlier, we will have a much greater impact. We know there's a precious opportunity to reach children at the moment when they can learn and grow the best. And so we feel urgency. We feel passion in this administration that there is another step we have to take and a step we can take. And it's going to be a big step for New York City, but it's going to do so much good for so many children. So the fact that this is the day we embark on this next mission makes this a very good day for New York City, a joyous day for New York City, because so many children and families will benefit over these next years. I want to thank all those who are gathered here, and a number of them will be in the forefront of creating this new initiative. I want to thank Deputy Mayor Richard Bury, and you're going to hear from some other colleagues in a moment, but I want to thank Deputy Mayor Richard Bury. our Budget Director, Dean Foulahan, the Commissioner for the Administration for Children's Services, David Hansel, our Deputy Chancellor of DOE, Josh Wallach, Superintendent of District 7, Elisa Alvarez, and Superintendent of District 23, Mia Teresa Pate, and also the principal who's hosting us today at PS1, Jorge Perdomo, and all of the good folks who are here in the audience, advocates, educators, labor leaders, clergy, community leaders, so many people who have been urging us all along to go as far as possible with early childhood education, so many of whom were in the forefront of creating the vision of pre-K for all and believed in it and helped us prove what it could do for people, and now are going to join us on this next step on this road. So let's talk about our children and how they learn and how they grow. The fact is, the most important development of a human mind occurs before the age of 5. Parents see it, and scientific research confirms it. There is one opportunity to get it right. And this is the opportunity we've missed throughout our society for generations. There's one opportunity to get it right when the brain's developing and we can get a child to learn so deeply and to be on a path of lifelong learning. And we know in that precious window, which is really only a few years, we know that if we plant the seeds, if we set the wheels in motion, the impact on that child, on that family, and on our whole society is vast. And we know if we lose that opportunity, it never comes back. It literally never comes back. After those first few years, children continue to learn, but not the way they can in the very beginning. I always use that truism. A lot of people have seen children who come from one culture but grow up, say, in another country when they're their youngest years, how they can learn 2 languages simultaneously, almost effortlessly, which is not true later in life. It's an example of the way the human mind has this extraordinary sponge-like capacity in those first years. And we've got to grab that moment. We've got to make the most of that moment. If we don't, we continue to see lost opportunities. We continue to see children who don't go as far as they could. We continue the inequities in our society. It's not because we don't have the research to prove what we need to do. We have to have the will to do it. We have to put the resources front and center if we're going to get it right during that one precious opportunity. For a long time, the question may have been, could something like this be done? The question is asked and answered by our experience with pre-K, both the size of the pre-K initiative and the quality of it, the way the whole community of New York City has embraced it, the way that teachers and all educators came forward to make it work. Parents participated deeply. People demanded it and got it and showed that it worked and it mattered to them. So now we know at the age of 4, we're getting it right. We're reaching everyone. The door is wide open. Any child has a place in the pre-K system. Any child, every child will be served. And we know we are reaching those children and having that extraordinary multiplier effect. We can see it in the biggest school system in the country, in a place where every kind of human being is present. People of every background from all over the earth, the biggest, most complicated city in the country, we have proven you can reach every child at the age of 4. And now it is time to reach every child at the age of 3. We are ready to go farther, and today I am announcing 3K for all in New York City. We like the phrase 3K because it evokes the first part of our mission that succeeded so well. 3K for all will take place over the next few years. Well, we'll begin serving families next school year, September of 2017. And this will grow from there. Starting this September of 2017, we will build for there an unparalleled initiative, reaching the most 3-year-olds ever, putting every single child on a path to a better life. We take this momentous step in full accordance with our equity and excellence vision, because we believe that this school system for too long didn't reach enough children, didn't reach them the right way, and we're going to fix that. Equity and excellence is a blueprint for all of our grades, but now it's time to add another grade. It's time to take this school system, which currently teaches children over 14 years, and make it 15 years, so we can really prepare our children for today's world. Our vision is that 4 years from now, every 3-year-old in New York City will have high-quality, full-day, 3K education. Every single 3-year-old, starting in September of 2021, will have access to full-day education for free. And this is going to be a game changer, but it's also going to be hard to do. Pre-K was no walk in the park to put together, as my colleagues all know. This is going to be even harder, and it will take a little more time, but this investment will be one of the smartest we've ever made in the history of this city. I want to dwell on that for a moment. We are in the midst of a budget process and working closely with our colleagues from the City Council you'll hear from in a moment. In that budget process, we always have to make decisions about priorities. We come to the firm conclusion that this is one of the smartest investments we can make in the future of New York City. There are so many needs here, there are so many things that we have to choose among, but we believe this will have one of the biggest impacts in every sense on children, who of course will be the future of the city, on their families, their ability of the families to make ends meet now, but also on the success of those families going forward, on the future of our school system, on the future of our workforce. We believe across the board this is one of the best and smartest and most important investments we can make. So it will not be easy. This will unquestionably be harder to do than pre-K. There's less space available. We're going to have to find space where it isn't obviously available right now in some districts, or we're going to have to build new space out. We're going to have to find more teachers. We had a blitz to put together the teaching corps for pre-K, and it succeeded greatly. We found great teachers from here in New York City and even from around the country. We're going to have to do that again to get to 3K. And we all know we're facing a complicated fiscal environment going forward. But we still made the decision that we had to invest in the future of the city, that we had to think strategically and think years and years ahead, and this was the right time. And we also know that if you liked pre-K, if you liked the impact it had, you will like 3K even more, because starting earlier magnifies that impact. Look, it's really important to understand what this does. I want to give you a few examples. There's a Nobel laureate in economics, James Heckman, and he looked into public investments in early childhood education. He said they deliver a 13% return on investment in terms of human capital, an extraordinary rate of return, meaning the contributions that people make to society over the course of their lifetime, that this investment in early childhood education, the earlier you go, the better, and the more impact it makes. And he found that as you apply those resources later, of course, any investment in education is good, but the later you start, the less return you get, the less impact you make. And bluntly, we've been doing it backwards as a society for many years. We didn't focus on the youngest years, even though that's where we would have had the biggest impact. We didn't set the wheels in motion. But now that we're doing it, we're seeing that it works and that we have to take it farther. The clock is ticking when it comes to the development of each young mind. And if we don't grab that precious moment, we're actually making a mistake, not just in human terms, but in terms of how we spend the taxpayers' dollars, because this is where we're going to get the most done. And other research shows this as well. There's a tremendous program in New Jersey, the Abbott program, one of the best early childhood programs in the country, and it found that kids who did 3- and 4-year-old early child education did better for years to come. They did better in math, they did better in science, they did better in language arts. Even testing as far as 4th grade and 5th grade later in their lives, they were still doing better. If they had 2 years, 3-year-old and 4-year-old years, they did better than kids who had just 1. And those results were sustained. MIT did a study that found that every dollar invested in quality early education saves taxpayers as much as $13 over the long haul in terms of the cost of public education, in terms of public assistance, in terms of the criminal justice system. This is the practical argument, but the human argument is even more powerful. That translates to mean that if you invest in children early, they will end up with better lives, more opportunity. They will not fall into some of the traps that too often take our children on the wrong path. Literally, early childhood education helps children go on the right path, helps them succeed. So that's where our money should be. And I'll tell you, if we don't do it, we don't allow children to reach their potential. We don't allow families to see the success they deserve for their children. And I mentioned the economic reality too. A typical family paying for childcare for a 3-year-old pays at least $10,000 a year in this city. Many pay a lot more, just for one 3-year-old. It also takes away from the opportunity for so many people to work. If you have to either pay for childcare or provide it yourself, or don't have good options, that typically takes away from hours that could be put into work. So there's so many benefits here, humanly, for each child, for each family, for our larger society. And so we're going to make a major investment. We will propose in the upcoming budget a $36 million investment for next fiscal year, and that will ramp up to a $177 million investment by fiscal year 21. Now, this will involve a number of pieces, and I'll delineate them very quickly. First, we're going to take our existing program, Early Learn, the existing program that reaches 3-year-olds. We're going to upgrade it substantially and invest in it. Now, this is currently a means-tested program. I want everyone to be clear. This current program is based on income and goes to folks with lower incomes. And that will continue over these next few years as we transition to a universal program. But for 3-year-olds going into Early Learn now, they're going to see a program that gets substantially improved, a lot of investment. That's about 11,000 kids right now who benefit. They will see more teacher training for their teachers, more curriculum development, more support for families. It's going to be a ramp up to make that a higher quality program as we transition it into 3K. Second, we'll begin universal 3K in 2 school districts as a beginning. And that will be, in those 2 districts, the same kind of approach we took with pre-K, truly universal. Anyone can apply regardless of income or any other factor. We'll begin in this district, District 7 here in the Bronx, and District 23 in Brooklyn. And that includes in Brooklyn neighborhoods like East New York, Brownsville, Ocean Hill. By the fall of 2018, not this next school year, but the one after as it begins, there will be universal 3K in those 2 districts. That will be upwards of 2,000 kids. We will then continue to build out the 3K structure with 2 more districts each year. So there'll be 2 more for September of 18, 2 more after that for September of 19, 2 more after that for September of 20. And then we will take the big jump to a fully universal system by September of 2021, 4 years from this September. Now, let me say at the outset, anyone who wants to apply to the existing Early Learn program or wants to apply for the new seats that will be available in District 7 here in the Bronx and District 23 in Brooklyn, that'll be the same kind of application process we went through for pre-K. Anyone can call 311 or go to nyc.gov/3K. And you will talk to an actual human being. You will talk to an enrollment specialist who will help you determine how to go about applying and what works for you. And again, there will be 2 tracks initially, that continuing early learn program that is means tested, and then the universal program beginning in districts 7 and 23. It'll take us 2 years to build out 7 and 23, but there will be available seats for this September, even more the following. But anyone who wants to get information just has to go online or call 311. We'll continue that growth, but to get to the ultimate goal, we will need help. And that was true with pre-K as well. Pre-K worked because the City of New York created a vision, created tremendous public support for that vision, took that public support to Albany, got funding. We're going to repeat that vision, and we will take it to Albany, and we will take it to Washington. And as difficult and complicated as both places are, the world still works when it comes to something that the public demands. And we think the demand for 3K is going to be intense. We think parents are going to make very clear they need this. We think the momentum will grow. And we believe that based on the success in Albany last time, we will be able to put together a coalition over the next few years to win funding. And the federal situation, always interesting. Well, I remind you, we're talking about September of 2021. That's a long way from now, and a lot could happen along the way. But I will also say that one of the areas that has seen more and more bipartisan interest has been early childhood education. I always talk about pre-K. We're proud of what we've done here, and we're proud of what's been done in New Jersey and in Washington, D.C., but we're also proud of what Georgia is doing. We're also proud of what Oklahoma is doing. The whole movement of folks who believe in early childhood education, we've been struck by the fact that it is happening just as energetically in blue states as in red states. And there's a growing consciousness, including in the Congress, of why this is a smart and necessary investment. So we will build out over years, and we will build a coalition to put together whatever state and federal resources we need to bring this to full fruition. I assure you it will take very hard work on all these fronts I've mentioned. This, again, will be harder than pre-K. But we also have the example of pre-K to fuel this effort, to prove what can be done on a big scale and to prove what an impact it makes. And we'll say from the beginning, and we'll show, the City of New York will be putting a lot of skin in the game. We already have about $200 million in the Early Learn program. As I said, we will be ramping up to about another $177 million in city investment by fiscal 21. The remaining state and federal aid we will need will be able to show that we have already built something powerful and invested deeply when we go looking for that additional support. So I'll conclude by saying this. Anytime we'll look at a situation, including a time like now in history where there's certainly a lot of uncertainty, it's easy to say in a time of uncertainty, stand back, be cautious, be timid. That's not our way. It's not our way as New Yorkers, and it's not the way of this administration, or I might add, this city council. We believe the time is now. We believe we have a chance to reach children right now and start changing their lives, and we believe we can create the kind of momentum that will never be turned back. Once The parents of this city experience pre-K. They will demand more and more and more to the day that it becomes truly universal. And it will mean so much for our future. It's a bold move, but a necessary one, because it will literally frame the future of this great city. A few words in Spanish. Estamos anunciando nuestro plan de educación gratuita de alta calidad todo el día para niños de 3 años. El pre-kinder ha ayudado a muchos niños. Ahora una educación más temprana los va a ayudar aún más. No será fácil, pero nuestro plan es que cada niño de 3 años tenga acceso a este programa en 4 años. Si quieren más información, visiten la página de, hold on, what is this trying to tell me? 3K, okay, de 3K en el sitio web de la ciudad, nyc.gov, o llame a 311, that I can do, llame a 311. With that, it's my honor to bring forward someone who understands this, I would say, as well as anyone on this earth, and she is now, Carmen, what year is it now? 51 years? 51 years in education? Getting better all the time. Our school's chancellor, Carmen Farina.
Thank you. This is truly a marvel. Let me be putting it in very practical terms. First of all, is starting in 2 districts that have made tremendous strides, but for whom this is going to be a game changer. It's also part of the mayor's initiative that commissioners and chancellors talk to each other. And I can't say that I have a better partner than the commissioner of ACS. He's been wonderful. Our conversations have been rich. And he specifically wanted to make sure that we were the right people to entrust his 3-year-olds to. And I want to say that in very practical terms, this is what I see happening. A 3-year-old is a sponge. They pick up everything. So why not have them in the best place where the stuff that they're picking up is the right stuff? Socially, they will learn how to play with others. They will learn how to talk to each other. They will learn to do what the famous poem says, everything I learned in kindergarten. Why wait till kindergarten? Let's do it in pre-K. And the ability to share, cooperate, collaborate, critical think, analyze, are all the skills that you need for the future jobs. Very few jobs 10, 15 years from now are going to be how well did you memorize, how well do you recite information. It's how do you learn to think. So why not have kids learning to think as young as 3 and even younger, although I think we have enough on our plate right now. But the reality is that the whole idea of socialization, which is really something that needs to be done in pre-K, this is part of the program. The other thing I think is very important is emotional. This is an absolutely wonderful way for us also to figure out who are the kids that already may have disabilities or problems or speech problems. Speech problems in particular, the sooner you get at them, the sooner you deal with them, the more likely that they're going to be dealt with appropriately. And now as a grandmother of a child who has some issues, we learned at 3 years old and immediately got on it, but that allows us now as educators to be able to do something much quicker and much more appropriately. And I think that particular will also help us in terms of going towards the future, in terms of special needs kids. Are they really special needs, or is it that some of these students did not get diagnosed early enough with the interventions they needed? So that's another very practical thing. I think the other thing is also that it allows us to start giving parents support much sooner. And I don't care where you live in the city of New York, if you have 1 child, whether you have 3 children or 10 children, you need support. You need people to talk to. The DOE just started a mom's program for people in the building, and I was their first guest speaker. And one of the things I keep saying to them, you can't do it by yourself. You need to vent to other people. You need to talk about what are the things that are normal for certain ages. And 3-year-olds are known for not being so normal across the board. So how do you have parenting courses early on for 3-year-olds in our schools that will allow people to have these conversations, have them deeply, and be supported? The other thing I think is also about imagine, because some of these programs will be in the schools where these children have their older brothers and sisters. Imagine a parent who doesn't have to make a decision in the morning whether I go here, here, or here. And you have the ability to leave all your children off in the same school and have a commitment to that school from the very beginning. So this is also about parents who can see the school as part of their community, go out and work, as actually the parent said today, and then be able to do something deeper, knowing that all their children are in the same place at the same time. I cannot say enough about what I think this is going to do ultimately. It also, and as part of the discussion we had with the Commissioner, allows us the opportunity to teach teachers in a consistent way. If you go to pre-Ks in the city of New York, you will see something there that you might not have seen years ago. There's interactive learning. Josh knows I come running back when I see something that's a little off kilter. I hear talking, I hear noise, I hear investigations. Now it gives us an opportunity to have training for the three-year-old teachers right alongside the 4-year-old teachers. So we'll see a continuum that's more seamless, and that will mean that the more you're consistent in what you're doing, the more likely it sticks with the kids. And I think that is a really, really important part of what we're doing. And since we really have ramped up our professional development, particularly for early childhood, I think that is really an important part of what we expect to do here. I think, finally, the most important thing for all this is allows us to really make clear what I've always felt in all my time in education, that the people who are most vulnerable are anywhere from the age of 0 to the age of reason, which is 7. And if we don't invest, we're not investing in ourselves as either a city or a community or just civilization. And to talk about high school graduations, which is important, but not to talk about early childhood, the social, emotional, and academic learnings of those children is to miss the boat altogether. We don't play catch-up in high school. We need a consistency across the 0 to 16 and beyond to ensure that our kids are the citizens of tomorrow that we want. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I mentioned the extraordinary support we've had throughout the whole pre-K experience from the City Council, and again, everything is a partnership in this work. Doing something on the magnitude of pre-K in 2 years' time took everybody being involved right down to the district level, helping us find space, the whole 9 yards, helping us reach out to parents and getting them involved. That great work continues. So we look forward to working together with the council to achieve this goal. And I particularly want to thank our speaker, who has been in the forefront of pushing us to be bold on many issues. Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito.
Good morning, everybody. Buenos dias. Very excited, Mr. Mayor. I got to say, I just love the Chancellor. And I love you too, but thank you for the decision to bring on Chancellor Fariña, who really encapsulated so strongly and firmly what the importance of this decision. It's great to be here with you, Deputy Mayor, and with my colleague, Julissa Ferreras Copeland in Councilmember Salamanca's district. So, you know, we've all been hearing about how life-changing this is, and it truly is significant. 3 years ago, the City Council issued a resolution declaring its support for Mayor de Blasio's aim of universal pre-kindergarten for city 4-year-olds. And as the city's focus on early education is expanded to include high-quality programs for 3-year-olds, we remain in full support of this welcome enhancement. This is another important step in our commitment to improving the lives of residents through the expansion of educational opportunities and the exploration of innovative systems of learning. And I'm thrilled to see this initiative begin right here in the South Bronx. I represent a large portion of this district, in the educational district, and also in Brooklyn, obviously. I'm glad that it's being done. These are communities, obviously, which for so long have gone historically overlooked and underfunded. This program represents a brighter future for local students and a welcome option for parents in search of additional school choice. And in a time of dramatic uncertainty, as has been mentioned many times, uncertainty over the future of our national education system, it is inspiring to see New York City lead the way in opening classrooms to more students than ever before. And despite that federal uncertainty, we will not abandon our core values, whether it's to our immigrant brothers or sisters or to our 3-year-olds across the city of New York. Moving forward from today, these 2 districts will be starting this 3K program, and slowly but surely, because we're committed to bringing this transition to New York City students, no matter how long it takes, we will see additional rollouts of the program to sufficiently resource districts. I have to say that most everyone here who is speaking today is speaking as a parent, but as someone who has made a life's choice not to have a child, but has made a life's choice and commitment to fight for equality and justice. This is truly the game changer. If we want a just society, if we want a more equitable society, we're going to invest in the early education of every child, and I am deeply committed to that. So obviously, in full implementation in the near future does remain difficult if we do not have the support of Albany and Washington, D.C. But we're going to continue to fight for that. But obviously, the mayor has indicated, and we definitely stand alongside that commitment and that vision. You know, this is truly visionary. A lot of times when we think about politics, people get stuck in the present and maybe making decisions that are not in the best interest of our city because of whatever the political wave may be at the moment of opposition. But if we're talking about the financial stability and the future success of our city, then we have to think decades ahead of it, right? Investing in children now brings a greater future for New York City, a brighter future for New York City 10 years from now, 20 years from now. So you have to be visionary in order to say, you know what, I'm going to take the hits and I'm going to make the decision that this is the direction we're going to go in because it's in the best interest of our city. So I want to commend the mayor for his vision and for his leadership. And so again, and the last thing I'll say, that it's not only sound public policy what we're talking about here today, and obviously talking about investing in pre-K for our 4-year-olds has demonstrated that, but it's also cost effective. Because if you start thinking about the shifting of resources, the way they're being spent now, which probably is not the most cost effective way, and providing a more universal system, you're going to see those shifts lead, right, to greater benefits for the city of New York in the future. Less public assistance, right? Less interventions in middle school or high school. There's ways that we see economic gains and a brighter future for the city of New York. So obviously here in New York City, with just a minimal amount of help, it is fully within our reach to bring these advantages to the children of every local school district. So again, thank you to Mayor de Blasio. And I'll just say very, very quick in Spanish. Es un placer estar aquí con el alcalde y la canciller para celebrar el inicio de Pre-Kinder Universal para niños a partir de los 3 años en 2 distritos, en Brooklyn y aquí en mi distrito en el Bronx. Hace 3 años el Consejo se comprometió a darles la oportunidad a todos los niños en la ciudad a que puedan acceder a la educación pre-kinder de manera gratuita. Hoy estamos reafirmando este apoyo con este anuncio dedicado a los niños de 3 años y más. Y esperamos poder extender este apoyo a los 5 condados en el futuro. Este es otro paso importante en nuestro compromiso a mejorar las vidas de nuestros residentes a través de la expansión de las oportunidades educativas. Gracias.
Finally, I'd like you to hear from the chair of the Finance Committee in the City Council. That is one of her titles. She is also still a pretty new mom, so she knows how much this means for families, but also represents one of the districts in this city that has some of the most profound challenges in terms of overcrowding, in terms of new Americans looking for opportunities. So Julissa Ferreras-Copeland understands what this would mean to get this opportunity for all of our 3-year-olds and all their families. The chair of the Finance Committee, Julissa Ferreras-Copeland.
Thank you. Well, the good thing is I've had to edit a lot of my talking points because a lot of it has been said. As finance chair, we work together, obviously the speaker and I and the mayor, to make sure that the priorities of our city are set forth with our budget. And I think this is not only the right thing to do, it is the just thing to do. So I'm very excited to be standing here today. As a former Beacon director and working with young people myself, I understand firsthand how important it is to not only support young children at the very ripest of age, but also providing the after-school programming that's necessary to support everything that they've learned in the classroom. So again, I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge that the mayor is really thinking about, and his administration, about wrapping our young people with every tool, every protection necessary. Working parents are going to be so grateful for today. I am the mother of a 3-year-old, as the mayor mentioned. So when I got the call, I was like, yes, when does this start? Understanding that there's nothing more daunting for a mom and a dad. And Julian's mom is a politician and his dad is a rocket scientist. So there's nothing more daunting than sitting down at that kitchen table to choose where we would put our child. It is no different. We all have that same kitchen table, regardless of your income, because what you want for your child is the best opportunity. And what this means is that this city is going to stand by working families, that they no longer have to decide which program between $10,000 and $45,000 they should be sending their children to, whether a person who has a 2-working family household or a mom who's working at a fast food restaurant, whether her child will have a better education over the other. We are making it equal. Because it's for all, there is now an equal playing field for all 3-year-olds. And yes, thank you. And I don't know if this happens to be the truth for all of you, but I remember my 4-year-old experience when my mom put me in UPK. I remember my first teacher. I remember getting sick. I remember her picking me up. I remember learning. I remember that experience. So to think that young children don't is very unfair to them. Julian this morning woke up and told me, Mom, I'm trying to figure out how to stabilize the train. And I said, I'm so happy. And I really believe that when we expose our children to great reading, when we expose our children to great teachers and great support, they in turn end up being great adults. And that is what New York is doing today. I am so honored and humbled to both have this opportunity to shepherd this through as finance chair, but for all the 3-year-olds and for all those moms out there, and for all of you who think, oh, this doesn't affect me, by 2021, your life could be completely different. Because if you start now, guess what you'll have in 4 years? All right.
Well done. 2 important points. Did he say stabilize? Yes. He said stabilize. That reminds me of my favorite. And Carmen was my witness the time we were visiting the pre-K classroom, and the kid said metamorphosis. One of the great moments in pre-K history. He just spontaneously said metamorphosis. It was a great day. Also, for the record, Jalissa's husband, that was not a figure of speech, her husband is a rocket scientist. That's an actual profession, and that is his profession. All right, we are going to now take questions about this proposal, and then we'll talk about other topics as well. Juan Manuel.
Mr. Mayor, so is the city going to hire new teachers? What are the centers or schools are going to be given the 3K? And also, a la canciller Fariña, ¿cómo fue el proceso para elegir el sur del Bronx y Brownsville? ¿Es porque son distritos con ingresos más bajos? ¿Porque hay un peor desempeño académico?
Yeah, that's part of it. So the Chancellor will speak to that. To the second question, and it was also, she'll explain where our single shepherd program is already active in these 2 districts, but she'll speak to that. On the first question, how many teachers? So this group here is going to be responsible for the build-out. This is the same dream team that put together pre-K. Again, now we're sending them on a bigger and harder mission, but I have no doubt they will succeed. I think we talked about earlier 4,500 teachers. We predict the need will be for about 4,500 new teachers. And again, with pre-K, we made it a passionate thing. We made it a call to arms to teachers all over New York City and all over the country. Come be a part of creating the right approach to early childhood education in the biggest city in the country. And you know, in the vein of if you build it, they will come, we got an extraordinary response from teachers. And that's part of why pre-K is working so well. Very, very dynamic teachers want to be a part of it. And we think that's going to happen again with 3K. To the choice of districts. Carmen, you want to speak to that in Espanol? You can do both English and Espanol.
Okay, I'll start with English. We carefully selected these 2 districts because they already have some supports within the districts. They are single shepherd, although we're not shifting them off the 6 to 12 model. But because they already have training, social worker training that we feel will be very compatible with the 3-year-old training, we thought that was really a good way to go. We also know that in those 2 districts is high need in terms of a lot of those parents. There are no centers in many of these neighborhoods. There are no infrastructures. So having the school as the infrastructure makes sense. One of the things that we're considering as well in the pre-Ks, where there's space, we would consider a multi-age 3 to 4-year-olds. It's one of the ages that actually makes sense doing together. I know I put my children way back when in 3, 4-year-old classes. The 4-year-olds already are a little ahead verbally, and they can share what they know with the 3-year-olds. So we selected those 2 districts because of need, because they have outstanding superintendents. They also have space, which we think is really a good way to start with what we're doing. So we know that there's also a commitment to early childhood, and parents in those 2 particular districts have asked over and over again for more support in this area. Es muy importante explicar que vamos a empezar con 2 distritos en la ciudad. Escogimos esos 2 distritos más que nada porque tienen sitio, además de eso tienen ayuda ya en el distrito para ayudar con padres y familias, y son distritos que no son tan fácil para otras organizaciones empezar programas. So we think for all those reasons, I do my Spanglish kind of combination here, that it's really a good start. We also want to make sure, and we did this with pre-K as well, that we create model sites, supervise carefully, intervene immediately, so as we expand these programs, we know what's working and what's not working. So I think starting small and growing out just makes a lot of sense.
Dave.
Mayor, you said this year it's going to be $36 million in your budget. So, but as you build it out, and you mentioned Albany briefly, but how much is this going to have to be money coming from Albany to do it? And also in light of budget scenarios you've seen coming from DC, which are pretty scary for the city.
Let me explain the thinking. We are closely monitoring the situation in Washington, D.C. And I'll say up front about that, no one knows where that's going. You know, I think you could certainly surmise from the first 100 days that a lot of the changes, the radical changes that might have been projected so far are not happening. But Lord knows we're not going to prejudge the situation. I've said very consistently we're going to have to fight to make sure the federal budget is fair. We do not belittle the challenges here. But to the point of why we're sequencing it this way. So again, we're spending now about $200 million on the existing early learning program. We will spend by fiscal 21 an additional $177 million to build out to 8 full districts. The notion here is simple. We know we can achieve that goal with our own resources. So of course, if we can achieve something, we should start doing it. We believe it will be the evidence, just like pre-K was. We believe as it builds, it will provide real living evidence that this is the right approach. It will, take away a lot of the doubts or opposition because people will be able to see with their own eyes it's working. Obviously, it'll show we have skin in the game, and that is important in Albany and Washington to see that localities are investing themselves. We're doing that up front. We know, unlike pre-K, this would take several years to achieve anyway because of the space issues and other issues. So we think this is a good way to create momentum, to reach a lot of kids in the near term and create momentum. Now, the Washington picture, I don't belittle, Dave, how complicated it is. I also remind you again, September 2021, there will be a midterm congressional election between now and then. There will be a full presidential election and another congressional election between now and then. We don't know what we're going to be dealing with. Could be similar, could be very different. We're going to hold out hope that under any scenario, let's say at least we think maybe there's nowhere to go but up. But also, again, there has been a few areas where we've seen some bipartisan consensus, and early childhood education is increasingly one of them. So all those reasons, we're not counting out the federal piece of the equation. The state piece of the equation, we have a body of evidence that it really was possible to put together a coalition around pre-K. The Assembly had pushed for early childhood education for decades. The IDC very enthusiastically got involved fighting for pre-K. The Senate Republicans ultimately were willing to come on board, and the governor as well. So we've seen with our own eyes that that coalition can be put together. We have time to create it. and prove it that it can work. So that's why we think it's a real ramp up. That last piece, to be clear, to go from 8 full districts and the existing early learn program we have to ramp it up to 32 districts, full strength, universal, that'll take approximately another $700 million. So that's what we're going to need to find between state and federal resources by the fall of 2021, by 4 years from now. Okay, let's go way back, way back.
The LPOE teachers or will there be community-based organizations involved? And also for ACS, will the administration of the people who administer early learn and ACS take over the administration of this? And will there still be the ACS vouchers, private vouchers?
Rich, Josh, who wants to take this one?
Good morning. So one of the questions was about CBOs, and similar to pre-K, we expect that the system will include both public schools and community-based organizations. We expect about half and half, but it'll depend as we grow. I think you also asked about the administration from ACS to the Department of Education. So part of what we're doing here is the incredible team that Chancellor Frenia and Deputy Chancellor Wallach built at the Department of Education is relying on some of that capacity, both in terms of outreach and program supports, and using that to drive further quality in the pre-K space. In terms of the vouchers, part of our overall plan is to continue to engage in conversation between the Department of Education, ACS, and the other agencies that are involved to think about the role that vouchers play, and certainly we're going to be addressing that as part of our ramp up over the next several years.
And that means child care vouchers, to be clear, not the notorious school vouchers. And let me say further, just to clarify, we will be continuing what we did with pre-K, community-based organizations, charter schools, religious schools. All are welcome, but with a single set of ground rules, with a contract everyone has to sign, with one curriculum, with one approach to training, but we will welcome any and all community partners. Way back.
Mayor, a couple funding questions. One, in the city council agreeing to this added funding, were there any trade-offs in terms of finding savings elsewhere? And
okay, I'll start with that, and then you do a second. When we have these conversations, we work, this is talk about three-dimensional chess. There's a lot of things going on in the budget process for a budget of this magnitude. The specific answer was no, it was not based on specific trade-offs. The council has been very clear over these last years. They want to see us protect reserves, and they want to see us look for any savings we can achieve. We'll be talking about that a lot later in the week, about how we have worked together on that mandate. We have some substantial pieces there. But no, this was supported unto itself. What's the second?
State funding, you said on pre-K in the past that Campaign for One New York and the momentum around that and all the work there was basically essential in getting the funding for pre-K from the state. So without that mechanism, how would you put a coalition together to get the funding this time?
Look, it's pertinent to the moment we're in nationally right now, in that we felt in the beginning, meaning obviously I'm referring to the quote-unquote first 100 days, we felt in the beginning, having put forward this pretty difficult vision, meaning a hard-to-achieve vision of full-day pre-K for every child on a 2-year timeline, that we needed to do everything and anything to get the support to make it happen so we could create the kind of momentum for early childhood education and for the vision that later became equity and excellence. We did that. We succeeded. Again, I've said many times, I believe it was the right thing to do. There'll be no such mechanism in the future. And I don't think, bluntly, it will be needed in the future because the last time around it was theory. We all knew it was theory. And we, in the church, there is the phrase, "this far by faith." We, many times in those long discussions of how to achieve pre-K, it was a matter of faith because no one had ever done it on the scale we did it here in New York City, particularly on that kind of time frame. But this time we are working from a model that worked. Even a rocket scientist would say we have evidence and a model that has worked on the ground and can be replicated very, very consistently. So I don't think we're going to need the same kind of mechanism as from the past. Marcia.
Could you talk to us about the numbers? So how many slots will the $177 million that the city's putting in cover in the 8 districts? And when you get to the $700 million, how many slots globally do you hope to offer to 3-year-olds? And in order to get that $700 million, would you support a tax in Albany, or do you think that the state might, just seeing your success in the past, give you the money?
Okay. I'll have Deputy Chancellor Wallach speak to the fine-tuning of each stage and the numbers. I can say broadly, when it gets to full strength, we expect it to be not quite as big as pre-K, because we think there will be some parents who are not yet ready to have their kids go to school at 3 years old, but we think it'll be close to the numbers of pre-K. Say again? He'll speak to the numbers. I'm just giving you the broad rule of thumb. We think it will mirror pre-K, somewhat smaller. We also think, as we've seen with pre-K, the more people experience it, the more people start to say, wait a minute, that does make sense for my child. And bluntly, in a society where people are working longer and longer hours and are stressed in so many ways, it's going to be something a lot of parents think is practically really important for their lives. So before Josh comes over, look, all options are on the table. When we talk about the federal picture first, I remind you, 2 full elections between now and full implementation, so a lot of interesting things could happen there. On the state front, we think the energy is obvious to our leaders in Albany. They've seen what happened with pre-K. I've talked to plenty of legislators who talk about the conversations they have with parents in their district. They know how important it is, how popular it is. Be a very different and I think easier conversation this time. It's still real money. We have to find it. We're open to any option. If folks in Albany say, you know, we're ready to fund this, that's a great option. If they want to talk about a taxation scheme like we proposed last time, we're open to that. But we're going to lead that discussion in Albany, finding out what the legislators think makes sense as a way to get it done. Yeah.
Like, how much do you need from the state, and how much are more?
As I said, the 700, so I'm going to do it again, 200 million we're already spending on Early Learn, 177 million more we would commit by the ramp up for the school year beginning. So that will be by the school year beginning September 20, and therefore fiscal 21, we will be at that 177 more above current spending. So pushing on towards combined about 400 million. We will go to state and federal government for 700 million more on top of that. Josh, on the different numbers and how it builds out by students.
Thanks. It's terrific to be with you all this morning as we come together to announce this big initiative and also create a real seamless system for all children birth to 5 in New York City. The way it would work is in the first 2 districts, and I just want to caveat say the goal here is to provide a seat for the family of every 3-year-old that wants one, so this number may turn out to be lower or higher, but we estimate for the first 2 districts at full strength we'll be serving between 1,800 and 2,000 students. When we get to the 8 districts, the 8 that the city will support on its own, we estimate, depending on which districts we choose to go into and the demand we see, we'll learn a lot as we go, we'll be serving about 20,000 3-year-olds. At full strength, we're estimating that the full program would be about 62,000 3-year-olds. That's based on our calculation, based on the demand for pre-K. Thanks.
Okay, way back. Oh, no, wait, you had one. Let me get folks who haven't had first, and we'll come back around. Go ahead.
Mayor, some people are critical of universal pre-K as like that it's just babysitting. Do you have any? Can you lay down some of the evidence? Or,
Bring them to me.
You know, can you provide a little bit of what the value add here is beyond having
Who
kids
wants
where
it?
to go?
I ask anyone who says that, have you been in a pre-K lately? I will tell you that I go, every single school I go to, I always ask to go to pre-K. You will see pre-K students beginning writing. You will also see that teachers are beginning to look at the writing and say, oh, I was just in a pre-K last Thursday. And I said to the principal, do you notice that the writing of these 2 children may require you having someone look at them? Because I think they may be having difficulties. So we're doing early intervention. We also have pre-K where we're monitoring attendance, and you're seeing attendance like 95%, which means those parents know they put those kids in a safe place and they can go out and get a job or do whatever it is they need to do. I also go to pre-Ks and see kids doing an experiment. Right now, one of the science experiments are do things float or sink? And you have 2 4-year-olds discussing what are the objects that will float and which are the ones that will sink. That's science. You have students reading, I was in pre-K a few weeks ago, and they were reading Eric Carle, and one of the students said, you know, he must really like science because a lot of his books are about science. So you're having them comparing and contrasting, which is a common core skill that is being introduced in 2nd and 3rd grade. So anyone who has any criticism about is pre-K babysitting, part of it is because what teachers are doing is nurturing those kids, so they'll love learning, so they'll love coming to school, and they'll love the fact that teachers are working with them to make them smarter. But this, to me, is a no-brainer, and it means someone hasn't been in a classroom to see what's actually happening.
You want to add? Please. You want to add? Okay.
Maybe just to follow up on the funding. You know, we've talked a lot about the federal budget, and you haven't factored in any potential cuts, but you're sort of still counting on getting money. I mean, do you think that those are contradictory things? You know, like we're not factoring in
if you're as Melissa said, and I'll let her speak to it too. If you're living in today only, you know, this day in 2017, you might feel that. If you say our job is to create a vision, give it strength and momentum, and build a coalition to achieve it. And there's 2 ways to win. You can get it all done in Albany, you can get it done in Washington, you can combine them. You know, there's different ways to do it. No, I'm not going to be held back because of a current reality. I'm not sure how much that current reality is going to mean ultimately. Do you want to speak to it?
No, I mean, and just to reiterate what was said, I mean, the city is making a commitment to 8 districts, right? To get universal, we need the support of the state and the feds, and we're going to have to work and build, you know, coalitions to make sure that that message is sent. But the city, and the city is making a commitment to those 8 districts, that's an investment in the future of the city as well. So I appreciate and I'm grateful that that is being proposed, and we will definitely stand behind it.
I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit more about what's happening in the very first year of the program. So you have an existing early learning program. Are you expanding classrooms at all there? And when you talk about upgrades, I know you mentioned teacher training. What's the extra $36 million paying for?
Yeah, so there's 2 parts to what we're doing in year 1. The first is we're partnering with the Administration for Children's Services, and we're essentially putting in place the kinds of support that we do for pre-K for all into 3-year-old classrooms that are run by Early Learn. So what does that mean? It means that we have a set of incredibly talented, experienced teachers who are instructional coaches who go into classrooms to help them improve practice, a set of social workers that help teachers work with children and create safe and welcoming environments and help them engage with families. And we have a set of program assessment specialists that help programs understand where they are in accomplishing the goals of pre-K and getting better at what they do. So those same supports will be in place for 3's classrooms in Early Learn, and we'll work together. Yes, and as the Chancellor reminded me, in both the districts where we start, we will also have an additional support in the superintendent's office, an early childhood director, who will help to oversee the district's pre-K, 3K and pre-K efforts. In year 1, we'll also add, years 1 and 2, we'll add additional classrooms, both in district schools and in what we call New York City Early Education Centers, which are our community-based partners that often have years of experience in providing high-quality early childhood education and care. And so we'll be partnering with them to bring on additional seats in those 2 districts, and we'll be adding those supports that I described to all the 3's classrooms citywide. So that's what the first tranche of funding does.
There will be more classes added.
There will be more classes. We're going to get started today and trying to identify new classrooms, new teachers, and beginning to prepare great content for the first day of school this fall.
We're going to ask all our friends and partners to get started today with us. Get ready, fasten your seatbelts. David.
3 quick questions. The first one, for the 8 districts, how are you choosing where the 6 that haven't already been chosen are? The second one is a practical one. I have a 2.5-year-old who's going into a program for 3s. You have to be potty trained by then. Is that part of this program? And thirdly, the announcement had your wife here as well, and you heard her voice earlier. She's on here. I'm just wondering why that is.
It's a schedule change. She's got her own portfolio of things, and she decided that she needed to focus on some of the other pieces. On the first point, let's see, so I'm not the expert on the potty training protocol. We'll have them speak to that. The first one was on the 8 districts. The 8 districts, the honest answer is we're going to make a decision in the coming months about the next two, very much based on logistical reality. To get the first two up and running, as we say, will take 2 jumps. The space considerations in particular are going to loom very large here. So we're going to look at all the districts in the city, look at obviously where there's need, but also where we think we can put it together logistically on this kind of timeline. We'll look at a lot of things, but where can we be convinced that we could get it done on this timeline? There's some districts that you could tell immediately it would be very tough because they're going to need early childhood education centers built. Those obviously will wait a little longer so we can get the physical infrastructure in place. Who wants to talk about this controversial and important topic?
Yes. Yes. The answer to the question is it really depends on where the child is developmentally, but there are lots of districts that, as the chancellor alluded to, teach 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds together. 3-year-olds need a little bit more time typically for self-care routines, as they're called, including going to the bathroom and eating, and also processing information and working with one another. So teachers will have to make that adjustment, but they'll be trained to do so, and we'll have the facilities to handle children at various stages on the skill that you mentioned. Yes.
Have to be out of diapers to participate in this?
No, they do not. We can handle either way. Thanks.
Lindsay. Lindsay? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was Lindsay. It's Kate. I thought I saw Lindsay. I saw Lindsay somewhere here. Kate.
The evidence about the impact of early childhood programs is really for low-income children. So I'm wondering a couple of questions. First, what's your justification for expanding this program to all 3-year-olds rather than specifically targeting it by income and maybe expanding it, to younger ages and really focusing on the quality and intensity program for low-income children who are the ones who've been shown to benefit? And secondly, the quality in the current pre-K for 4-year-olds is uneven. Do you think that you're going to be able to continue putting the necessary effort into that and making the quality more uniform at a high level while you're also working so hard to get this new program going?
I'm going to contest the premise of the question, and my panel of experts will speak to it. I would not say uneven is at all an accurate description of what's happening with our current pre-K. It is a young program and a program that will continue to improve because we're putting a huge amount of energy into it. That will never change. But I don't agree it's uneven, and I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time, continue to make pre-K as good as it can be while building out this new piece, and I'll let my colleagues speak to that. On the first question, I believe fundamentally in the universal model. I believe it's good for everyone. I believe it creates a fairness and equality in our society. I believe it creates something that helps every kind of family, educationally and economically. I think it creates a communal reality that's fantastic for this city, where everyone has something they can believe in and depend on. I think it obviously creates maximum energy to get something like this done and supported here in the city, in the state, on the federal level, if it's something that everyone benefits from. And I also am a big believer, from my own experiences as a public school student myself and from seeing my kids, I believe that the mix of different peoples lifts all boats. I believe that we want to see our children learn around every kind of child. That's good for them socially. It's good for them in terms of building a more unified society. Kids who come in with some disadvantages benefit from having kids around them who are more advantaged and have had more opportunity. It's good for everyone. Who wants to speak to the current status of?
I want to be clear. Public education means just that. It doesn't mean that economically you're entitled to this or overly economically you're entitled to it. It means everyone's entitled to the same thing. And to me, to have parents use public education, particularly grades 3 and 4, when they don't have to, the commitment they will make, ages 3 and 4, thank you. They will be committed to that school in other ways that their financial ability helps in different ways. I was principal of a school where parents chose to use my school who could have gone elsewhere, but what they added to the school once they were there helped all students in that building. And this should not be the city, well, if you're on the low poverty level, you get this, but if you have this, you don't get this. Equity and excellence means just that. equity and excellence for everyone. And that also means they're all exposed to the same learning and the same strategies. And that means that by the time they get to first and second grade, there will be an expectation in all the schools that all the students will have learned X, Y, and Z. The curriculum that we develop for pre-K is a universal curriculum, whether it's in a religious school, a private, anyone has a pre-K center, follows the curriculum that we set up, has the PD that we set up, and I expect that to be a really strong factor in the 3-year-olds. And again, I do take exception to the fact that pre-K has not been successful. I think it has been extremely successful, and I will take press with me to visit a pre-K of your choice anytime you want. Thank you.
So just, I never need to actually, I can't improve on anything the Chancellor said, but I just want to make a couple of quick points. One is just, again, to contest the premise. The research on pre-K show that the benefit to pre-K inure to all children. Certainly there is evidence that shows that low-income children benefit more, but it's not the same as saying that wealthier children or middle-class children don't benefit. And we can share some of that research with you. The second point, just around quality, is one of the big investments we've made in the pre-K for all program, and it will continue to 3K, is a large investment in quality improvements and evaluation. And the preliminary evaluations we've seen around quality have shown that we are administering a very strong, a very high quality program, and that our quality scores, as measured by some of the tools we use, are similar to the quality scores that other high quality programs like in Boston experienced at a similar stage in their development. So actually, although of course we need to continue to improve as we get older, we should be incredibly proud about the quality happening in New York City pre-K, and pre-K is truly extraordinary, particularly given the scope and quality of what we've built. And the third point, I just want to reiterate what the Chancellor said in another way. We should also remember that the benefits to pre-K are not only the cognitive and social developmental benefits to the 4-year-olds and now the 3-year-olds, but also the economic benefits to their families. And certainly in New York, we know that for middle-class families, for working-class families, the money you save by having a quality, safe place for your child to be is extraordinary benefit, and that's true at just about every income. So I just would challenge the premise, and you should absolutely go visit a program with Chancellor Farina, in part because it's great to see the Chancellor with those 3 and 4-year-olds, but you would see some amazing things happening in our school system.
And I just want to say one thing.
Come to the microphone.
You know, having raised 2 children and helping raise 3 grandchildren, parenting skills are necessary for all parents. I don't care where you live in the city. There is a pressure put on parents today about being a perfect parent, doing everything perfectly, and it's a false premise. So having parenting classes where parents can come and whine and complain and ask advice from each other, to me is crucial, whether you're a parent on the Upper East Side, Park Slope, or inner Bronx. So I think that a lot of the benefits of early childhood are across the board and have absolutely nothing to do with financial resources.
I just want to make one more point on the quality piece and the kinds of systems that we've built as a team to make sure that any door a family walks into for pre-K and now for 3K is an excellent program. As I mentioned before, we have an extraordinary team of educators and social workers and others that go into programs week after week and month after month to help them improve. And we actually are able to measure, as Deputy Mayor Bury put it, our progress against other districts. And we found that we are on par with some of the finest pre-K programs, the ones that have achieved the highest outcomes across the country, even at a very early stage of implementation. But we've gone farther than that, and we use that information in order to target our support. Our coaches and our social workers visit programs to help them with their particular areas of growth and help them get stronger and stronger. And then every year we publish that information in a really easily digestible format for families so they can see the particular strengths of their program and where they're trying to grow. And that is creating incredible momentum and incredible quality in our program throughout. Thanks.
Okay, who you've gone before, you have not gone.
The success of this program is going to rely so heavily on community-based organizations. Do you feel that you have sufficient space at the CBOs that the city partners with now for UPK to add new spots for the 3-year-olds, or will you have to partner with new CBOs?
I think it's a mixed bag. I think that there are places, so let me just quickly paint a picture of New York City. There are districts where we have substantial space in public school buildings. There are districts also where we have CBOs, as you indicate, that are doing this work and have access to additional space and are doing the work well. And that, again, can include also religious schools and charter schools. There are other places where there's a space shortage right now where we struggled to get pre-K to its maximum. In some places, we're still trying to finish out that effort in terms of having the space exactly where we want it. In those places, we'll double down on looking for any opportunity to create new space. By the way, that could come through existing development that's being planned. You have seen more and more schools being included in residential development. You can also include just a pre-K center or an early child education center in residential development. So that's going to be an option in some places. But in other places, we're going to have to keep building standalone early child education centers that could be 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, both. That's part of why we're being a little more careful about the timeline here, because we grabbed so much of the space the first go-round in some districts. So it will be very different, 32 school districts, every single one of them different. And those will be, to David's point earlier, those will be the go-tos where there's really readily available space options and good quality opportunities. Those will be the ones that will first build out. Some others, we are going to need all the way to September 2021 to get the space in place, and that's going to be a race to get it done. But we're confident we can make the pieces come together over the time we have. Okay, who has not gone?
I feel like I hear a lot of anecdotal information or stories about why pre-K is considered to be a success thus far. Can you point to anything else that you think really points to the
I feel like everything you just said was about actual studies, but let's have them reiterate.
And also, just to push back on the unevenness, we do know based on the class and Eckers data that gets released that there are sites that struggle, and I know the DOE provides specific supports to those sites. Okay, do you not acknowledge that there are?
Whoa. I want to challenge. I'm challenging your challenge. And then Josh, come up. You can be on deck here. Josh and the Chancellor, Deputy Mayor, all were referring to the overall situation of a program that is serving almost 70,000 kids in hundreds and hundreds of locations around the city. And we think that the facts are abundantly clear about the overall performance of the program. So uneven, if you want to say if you had a handful of places that weren't working well and the vast majority that were working well, you want to call that uneven, I think that's a misuse of the phrase uneven. I think we have a clear majority dynamic here of what's going on in our program. In any program of this size, there's going to be some places that have to do better, just like our school system. There's going to be some schools that have to do better. So, I think this initiative with pre-K is a success, period. And then there are certainly programs we have more work to do on. I think that's the best way to explain it. But go ahead on the facts more than anecdotes.
Yes. So again, I think you mentioned a couple of national ways of looking at some parts of program quality, and that's what I really want to emphasize here, because I think what the mayor and chancellor and deputy mayor asked us to do was figure out a way to look at programs quality along many different dimensions. And I think to look too narrowly at one set of scores, that we're proud of those national scores you mentioned, because they are on par with where the finest pre-K programs in the country were at this stage. We take a broader view. We look at consistent with the framework for great schools, the vision that the chancellor has laid out for school quality. We look not only at the instruction in the classroom and whether there are meaningful interactions between the parent and teacher. We look at whether the teachers are working together to improve their practice. We're looking at whether they're creating a supportive and warm environment. We're looking at the ways that the leader interacts with the teachers and the staff of a program. And we're looking at the ways they interact with families and do family engagement and community building. Those things are all measured. We measure all of them through the class and Eckers, which are nationally normed assessments that allow you to look at interactions within classrooms, but also by surveying parents and teachers in valid ways that allow us to get a sense. Now, I would say certainly there are programs that we want to support more, and we offer that support. really what happens most, as the chancellor sort of referred to me on the way over, is that programs have different strengths and different things that they're working on, and we try to support them on the ones they need help on and encourage them on the ones they're strong on and encourage them to collaborate with one another on those strengths. But overall, we are, again, just to say, the national scores for quality, we are on par with the finest pre-K programs where they were at this stage of implementation. And on these other measures, we're doing very well, and we have the supports in place to help get better and better every year. That's the most important thing in pre-K, in 3K, and in K through 12.
Amen. Mara.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, have you spoken to anyone in Albany about whether they would be open to funding this and helping the city out? Have you spoken to Senate Majority Leader or to the Assembly, and have you reached out to the Trump administration?
I've not reached out to the Trump administration. That day will come on this topic. We've done a round of outreach and are setting up meetings to go into detail with each of the key players in Albany, and that will obviously be timely because we're going to be talking to people about the legislative session as well. This is not, again, something we expect action on during the legislative session, but begin the conversation for next year. The one person that I reached and had a substantial conversation with was the IDC leader, Jeff Klein. I won't speak for him, but he was a central figure in achieving pre-K, and I think is well disposed to this idea, but I'll let him speak for himself. Sure.
Governor directly.
Again, we'll be speaking to the governor and his team as this plays out. Yoav.
Clarity on the question of a potential tax to fund this in Albany. Is that something that you're going to be specifically advocating? And if so, do you have a type of tax in mind?
Not specifically advocating. So I said it before, but I'll say it again. And I'll be interested how it's covered. So all options are on the table, meaning we're going to go to the leaders in Albany, starting with where it all begins, which is the legislature. We're going to say, here's the vision we have. We believe we have an extraordinary body of evidence that proves that this would have a seismic impact on this city. A city, I remind you, is 43% of the state's population. And that we believe this is one of the best investments we can make in the future of our schools and our city. And we have skin in the game. And we're asking for support to get this done. And that, again, would be referencing the next year's budget, which will be discussed starting in January. We're going to present that equation and talk to the various leaders about what makes sense. All options should be on the table. If the legislative leaders say, we think the right way to do that is to fund it outright as what happened with pre-K, that's great. If they prefer another model, we'll be open to anything. I'm very proud of it, we had a good model to fund pre-K that I presented to Albany. They didn't want to do it. They did something else that worked for us. That's fine. So we'll let them see what we're trying to achieve, and we'll let the legislative leaders tell us what is the most sensible way to proceed, and we'll go from there.
That it would be likely that an Albany legislator would propose this tax if you did not?
Again, I don't know if you heard everything I just said. I said we're going to let them decide what they think is sensible as a way to fund this. I'm not coming in promoting a specific methodology. I'm saying here's roughly the dollar figure we need. Here's why it's going to work. We have a body of evidence from pre-K, and where we have skin in the game, and we're asking for help from Albany, and then let them determine what shape that help would take. Now, I think I've got a lot of witnesses. I just said that we're putting everything on the table. We do not have a definitive plan. I'll be very interested to see what you write. I suspect it may not reflect the whole reality. Who else? I'm sorry, I've been to the dance too many times. Who else? Yes.
Just on the funding, just to clarify, you said take the $200 million from early learning currently being used, add $177 million from the city, and then $700 million more from state and federal. So that's about a little over $1 billion.
Correct. Right, and that's an early estimate. Obviously, that number could vary a little either way as we get closer, but that's a ballpark of taking the almost $400 million that's already in play up to $700 million, may even be less, but up to $700 million to finish it out. Hold on one second, let me finish.
And class sizes, going back to sort of David's question about the needs of 3-year-olds, even more so than 4-year-olds, what's the cap
The 3-year-old class size would be 15 compared to 18 for pre-K with 2 adults in the room.
15 per 3-year-old, but if it's a 3-4, would it be the same thing?
We'll balance it out. So.
Way back.
2 questions. So one is just how did the 177 figure come about of $5 billion? How do you decide to share? And then the other is your advisor campaign, the campaign for One New York, as integral to the effort for PK. Do you feel like you need an outside push this?
I just answered that question. Were you here, respectfully? I just said we have no plan to do anything like that because this time it is an established vision which has tremendous support, and we think we'll have a whole lot of support again. So apples and oranges situations. On the previous question of the budget determination, do you want to do that or someone else want to do it? So I'll start while they figure out the basics. Is we took what it would take to enhance the existing early learn, because we believe fundamentally it needed to be improved. Great program, a lot of people doing great work, but they deserve more support. And then adding universality in the first 2 districts, then ramping up to 8 districts. That's how we got to the first number. The rest is a projection off of that. What if you then went to 24 more districts universal on top of it? Who wants it?
Yes, I'll take it. We can provide more detail, but basically the way we built our estimates is based on our experience in pre-K for all. We took the approximate per seat cost that we've come up with for pre-K for all, both in district schools and in community-based organizations, which we call New York City Early Education Centers. And then we adjusted it for the lower class size from 18 to 15. And then we also made an adjustment to say we probably won't reach 100% of the pre-K. We won't reach the 100% of the pre-K enrollment level. We'll come in a little bit below, which I described, about 90% of where we came in for pre-K. So that's basically how we got to the numbers. It will vary a lot depending on which districts we go into because some are much bigger than others. But we made a model that just gives us a sense of where we're headed.
Okay, yes.
Mayor, the City Council's committee that oversees the ACS budget recently put out a committee report saying that Early Learn, the ACS program, has seen decreasing enrollment in part because of the challenge of finding qualified teachers for ACS Early Learn centers. I'm wondering how you think you can overcome, if there's already a scarcity of teachers, how do we overcome that in ramping up?
I want to separate that. So first I'm looking at Commissioner Hansel, and I'm looking at my colleagues here, and I don't know if I accept the premise, with all due respect to the City Council, if I accept that premise, declining enrollment because of lack of quality teachers. So anyone can speak to that, because I don't like to leave a premise unchallenged. And then on the second part of the equation, look, it gets back to what I said earlier. We are going to invest a lot in getting the best teachers to do this work, and we're going to make it a very appealing situation and provide a lot of support. I think it's fair to say that for a long time there wasn't enough, before we came along certainly, enough support for Early Learn, and I think teachers were put in a very tough situation. But as we have changed the city's priorities and focused on early childhood, I think we're creating an environment where it's for anyone who does early childhood teaching, it is a growing field with a lot more support, a lot more compensation. There's a lot going on here that makes it more appealing. So I don't suspect we're going to have any trouble getting the staff we need. It'll take the time, obviously, to ramp up, but I don't suspect we have any trouble in terms of people wanting to do the work. So just on the first point, so we don't leave it unspoken, which one of you wants to speak? Just hold on the Early Learn piece. Let's both do it. See, collaboration. Which one are you going to start?
I'll start. I would just say, and then I would just say that Pre-K for All, many of the early education centers that we work with also serve threes. It's a lot of the same organizations. In fact, we looked at it, and it's the large majority. So we know, because our instructional coaches and social workers are visiting there every month, that there's an incredibly talented teaching corps there. And we are thrilled to partner with the Administration for Children's Services to increase supports to those teachers and help them get even better at what they're doing. I would say that I'm going to let the commissioner push back on the premise of declining enrollment. I will say that one exciting thing we're going to do beginning right now is put our pre-K for all outreach team, which is our team that tripled the number of kids in free full-day high-quality pre-K in just under 2 years, to work in filling any empty early learn seat there is. To the extent there are any, we're going to begin calls today to the families across the city to help get them to those seats because we believe in them and we know they're high quality.
Thank you. Yeah, one of the things that we're very excited about partnering with the Department of Education on over the next year or so is on enhancing recruitment using their avenues as well as our avenues to make sure that we fill every seat that currently exists, and then obviously as they move forward to expand the program. With regard to teachers, we actually reached a historic agreement last year to enhance compensation for those teachers. A number of things we're doing, including actual pay as well as benefits and other things. So we're already well underway in improving conditions for teachers and making sure that teachers are fully compensated and equitably compensated for the work that they do. And that will roll into the program as it moves to the Department of Education.
An initiative this large starts much earlier than just the announcement today. And one of the things that we have been working on for the last year is making sure that CUNY and SUNY and even the private universities do a better job of increasing their teacher training programs, including early childhood teachers. So I have met with almost every dean of education. We have an entire committee at TWEET has been doing this. We now started calling Educators Rising programs in all our high schools, so we will have more people who want to become teachers. So this is a wonderful initiative, but what happens behind the scenes is really monumental to ensure that this goes off without a hitch.
Okay, let me see. Last call on this topic of 3K. Let's see, we got anything left? Going once, going twice. Okay, let's go to other topics. You lead off again. Fast hand today.
Mr. Mayor, what do you think about the acting Brooklyn DA, Eric Gonzalez, new guidelines in terms of people who might be undocumented and convicted of low-level crimes and misdemeanors? He says that his office is going to be mindful. He hired 2 immigration attorneys to educate everybody working in the office about this. What do you think about that? And what do you are you planning a meeting with Attorney General Jeff Sessions in the next few days?
I have no plans to meet with the Attorney General. If he wanted to meet, of course I would, but I don't have a plan to right now. I will reiterate what came out of the Justice Department the other day was an insult to the NYPD and an insult to the people in New York City. And you've seen the efforts to partially walk it back at DOJ, but not coherently walk it back. The strategies that made this the safest big city in the country were the strategies of this administration and this police commissioner on building on the incredible progress of our predecessors. So you can't separate the leadership and the policies and the rank and file. We're all doing this together and it's working. And I think it's been a pretty pitiful effort on the part of the Justice Department trying to somehow parse when they said something outrageous and inappropriate and absurd to begin with. I think they still owe it to the people of New York City and particularly to the men and women of the NYPD an apology and a clarification. But on the topic of the district attorney, I have not seen his initiative. I will remind you, our current policy makes very clear, again, our public safety policy, and I'm going to keep bringing it back to that. Everything we're doing is first and foremost about the public safety of everyone, including 1 million people who happen to be undocumented or permanent resident, that officers have been trained more and more to use all the options they have and use their discretion and their professional abilities to determine whether an arrest is necessary in a certain situation versus a summons versus a warning. And more we've seen arrests have not been necessary in a host of situations and other options have been made available, including through actions of the City Council. That's the path we're on. So I don't know the specifics of the district attorney's approach, but I know what the NYPD is doing, and I know very clearly that in terms of anything involving ICE, we're governed by a very clear city law. Yeah.
This is a question slightly related to your announcement. Development in my coverage area, the Bedford Park and Norwood sections of the
I'm sorry, where again?
The Bedford Park and Norwood sections
Yeah.
of the Bronx is booming right now.
Yeah.
Just as the local school district is experiencing a school seat shortage right
Yeah.
now. You've mentioned there are space issues already with this 3K for all plan. Where does the city draw the line on its development push if there's not enough city services or seats to manage the current demand?
So I'd say a couple of things, a very, very good question, but a couple of points to it. First of all, remember how much of this city, because of zoning, people have an opportunity to develop as is, as of right. A lot of development happening is not because of rezonings or proposed rezonings, it's working under the existing rules. We try to constantly adjust the supply of school seats accordingly. And I think the School Construction Authority has done an amazing job. They used to be an agency that bluntly was kind of slow. They're now become an agency that's pretty damn fast in the scheme of things and have produced new affordable housing at a rapid clip. And I think our existing plan is 40,000 plus seats in the capital plan, more coming, and they're moving fast. So the big answer is although we don't control exactly what type of development happens everywhere against sort of popular understanding, I think a lot of New Yorkers think we literally get to choose where every building goes. No, it's a free enterprise system. There's a lot of opportunity for people to make those decisions within the zoning. But we watch the trends and we adjust to where we're putting more school space. We're going to keep doing that with great intensity. We're making a huge investment. But that being said, we came to a very strong strategic decision, particularly after having had the experience of pre-K, that the highest impact investment we can make in our schools was at the youngest level. And that must be a priority. It's, think about it in terms of anything, any endeavor, any business. You invest your money where it's going to have the biggest impact. So when we looked at it, we knew we had a model that worked with pre-K. We knew we had a lot of areas where there was some available space we could work from, or those community-based organizations that are already doing a 3-year-old work, or the religious schools and the charters. So we were confident we could get a good, strong start. But we knew it will take some new building as well. Came to the conclusion that that was a fundamental strategic priority. So we're going to do that while making a big commitment to addressing broader overcrowding issues. I think it's fair to say this is something we will be at for decades, honestly, because this is a city that is growing to 9 million people over the next few decades. So honestly, the city of New York will be building new school capacity every year, I guarantee you, for the next quarter century to catch up with the demand that will keep growing in this city. Yeah.
So as we come upon President Trump's first 100 days, I know the city has spent a lot of time kind of fighting back against a lot of his initiatives with your own policies, your own legislative proposals. Do you feel like in this 100-day period, the city has spent time and resources has it had to neglect any other aspects, or have you had to divert resources that maybe you wouldn't have had to had you not been, I guess, counter?
The overwhelming answer is no so far. I think you could point to a few exceptions. We're going to talk about what we have to do to help folks who are facing deportation, and that is an area of new and greater concern. We have put a lot of energy into working with members of Congress and mayors around the country to fight things like the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. That's true. Had Hillary Clinton been elected president, that's time and energy we would not have had to spend. But it was a good use of time and energy, and we're obviously very pleased with the fact that Obamacare is alive and well, and we're right back to our efforts to maximize the number of New Yorkers who are getting health insurance. Again, our goal for this calendar year is to add 50,000 more New Yorkers to the rolls of Obamacare than would have signed up anyway. So, no, I think the verdict on the first 100 days is that not a lot happened. And that's a good thing for New Yorkers. And if that continues to be the case, it will allow us to stay laser focused on our priorities and continue to do what we're here to do. I can't project what's going to happen with the continuing resolution. We all know that's the next big item. I'm not going to be surprised by anything, but there is a lot of opposition right now in Washington and out in the districts around the country to anything radical happening in the continuing resolution. So, I'm not going to be surprised if we don't see major changes out of that, and the next real venue shifts to the fall and the fight over the full federal budget. And even there, I've said, we see a lot of places where Trump is proposing cuts that we think are going to engender massive opposition around the country, including from a lot of Republicans. David.
Another major promise that you made for the second term is to create 100,000 new jobs over 10 years. Looking back over your first 3 years, there aren't a lot of plans. Well, one of the plans that you did put out is this thing called the Tech Talent Pipelines, created about 400 jobs. I'm wondering, how you see your record so far creating jobs, and how you imagine that record prepares you to do more in the future. But let's look backwards, don't look forward.
The first thing I'll say is any new administration, so when we first came in, obviously, we were starting to create our vision and our approach. It takes time to take effect and to reach its fruition. It would be wrong if you came in the door and the first month or the first 6 months you said, all the job growth that's happening is because of me. It's part of why we really didn't talk about it a lot in the first year or two. We wanted to have definitive evidence that our policies were having an impact. Obviously, the vast majority of jobs are created because of choices made in the private sector. Some are created because of direct choices in the public sector, like when we expanded some public employment, or investments we made to foster the growth of certain sectors. But I think the greatest truth is that the public sector sparks job growth when we get the basics right. When we're safe and getting safer, when we have relative unity in our city and our social fabric is strong, when we continue to show progress on education, when the trash gets picked up, all the basics are. And I've heard this from many, many business leaders. That's what they're looking for first. Then they look at other things as well, of course. So I feel good that we set the framework for what is well over 300,000 new jobs since we got here. Anywhere in the country, any leader would be proud to say that. I think there's only one city in the country that's had a higher rate of growth, or amount of growth, I should say. The specific initiatives, the investments in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, the Brooklyn Army Terminal, the investments in fostering the tech community, the investments in fostering the life sciences community, and film and TV. We can get you the blow by blow, but I'm very satisfied they're all working, and I'm very satisfied we're on that path to 100,000 new jobs. Marcia.
Sir, I have several questions. The first one is this: the Senate Republicans are suggesting that in order for you to get a continuation or an extension of mayoral control, they'd like you to agree to an increase in charter schools. I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
I think mayoral control as an issue should stand alone. This is about what's best for our children and our families and what system of governance works. And I will say to anybody respectfully, show me a better system. Do you want to go back to the chaos and corruption of 32 school boards? Is there some magical third way no one's ever heard of? This is the only system that works. It should be continued. I know there will be once again a strong outpouring of support from the business community, from Democrats and Republicans alike, calling for a continuation of mayoral control, and that should be decided unto itself. Any other issues should be treated on their own merits.
Question: avid de Blasio watchers are suggesting.
I didn't know there were such a thing.
They're suggesting that your hair is darker. Are they wrong?
Your
hair is darker.
I think they're distinctly wrong.
Your hair is not darker.
My hair is, I wish my hair was darker. No, nothing, the hair is totally natural, Marcia. And you're maybe the only person who think it's darker, and I'm happy for this one moment. Yeah, that's your eyes, good. If you see it, I'm happy. All right, you're good behind you.
Yes, what's going on in Washington right now with the budget and holding, I believe, millions of dollars in funding Obamacare subsidies or whatever, because Trump is holding lawmakers accountable to building that wall.
Right.
So once they're playing it off the wall, what's your reaction to it?
My reaction is it's a dangerous strategy on the part of President Trump that Here's the great irony. The wall's not that popular. It's just not. I mean, look, again, I always say there are people who voted for Trump because they were very angry at the status quo in this country. And we ought to recognize that that was first and foremost about their economic reality. There are others who voted for Trump out of ideological reasons. Sadly, some people voted for Trump because they had racist motivations, but a lot of people voted for Trump, including those legendary Obama-Trump voters, were voting out of their anger at the status quo in this country. And they want to see their economic reality improved. And building a wall is not going to do anything for them. And a lot of them are smart enough to realize that fact, that building a wall thousands of miles away is not going to help them and their family to have a better quality of life. So it's a horrible misuse of government money. We have a country that needs our infrastructure to be addressed. We need to build better schools and bridges and roads and hospitals and all sorts of other things. Why would we be building a wall when we also all know that immigration has actually declined, illegal immigration has actually declined? So it just doesn't make any sense. And to suggest that they might shut down the government over it, that's even the bigger problem. That, I think it's quite clear that if there's a government shutdown, that will be the thing that's remembered most about the first 100 days of Donald Trump. And I can't believe they want to take that chance.
Mr. Mayor, this weekend we saw the second tragedy in the matter of a week of a young infant in the Bronx. In a family that had a history with ACS. Have you personally been briefed on these two cases yet? And based on what you know so far, are you able to say whether you're comfortable with the decision-making in leaving these children with both infants and toddlers, both sensitive ages, in these troubled homes?
I've been briefed, but I'm not going to go into detail now. These are sensitive situations that are still being looked at. There are obviously real confidentiality issues. So there'll be a point when we can say a little more. I think at this moment, every case is being looked at very, very carefully. I give Commissioner Hansel credit and Deputy Mayor Palacio that they pore over every case. And as you know, the child stat system is being built up to make sure that the practice in each situation is being done properly. What I can say broadly, and I've said this to you before without getting into the specifics of this case, we are going to be looking at how ACS handled each step along the way. We're also going to be looking at the dynamics around the court system and the decisions that the court system is making, because often, not always, but often, ACS is actually the more aggressive party looking for removal, and courts often have been unwilling to go along, and that's something we have to weigh in every case. So we'll have more to say in the next few days as we're able to. Yeah.
Mayor, I was wondering if you could address Dan Donovan, the congressman. He talked about the back and forth that you had with the DOJ.
Talked about?
The back and forth that you had with the DOJ.
Yeah.
And obviously he was very supportive of the police department, but he also said that the mayor and the city can't pick and choose which laws it's going to enforce. So it's a criticism of your policies and broadly sanctuary cities. I was wondering if you could respond to that.
I have a lot of respect for Congressman Donovan. I had a nice dinner with him during Staten Island week, and I want to once again say, I think he did something important standing up for his district on the Affordable Care Act issue. But I disagree with his interpretation here. We believe we're complying with the law very clearly, that we have a local law duly passed and signed and not legally challenged that makes very clear how we are to comport ourselves. And localities in this country have rights. That's what the Constitution says. Localities make core decisions about how to go about governing their own people. It's one of the most fundamental American ideas of governance. Now, you will remember the great irony here that Republicans used to invoke states' rights when they weren't in power in Washington. Now they are in power. They seem to be less interested in local decisions and the rights of people locally to make their own decisions about their own lives. So we believe we are respecting the federal law. We also believe we're respecting the Supreme Court decision in 2012 that made clear the limits on the federal ability to withhold funding. And we're very comfortable with the position we're taking.
Updates on yesterday's tragic fire in Queens Village, specifically with regard to what may have caused that?
No, it was horrendous. I was out there, and I can say broadly, having spent time with Commissioner Nigro and the Chief of Department, Jim Leonard, that for them, they said this was a really rare situation to have the middle of a day, on a nice day, a house go up in flames that quickly. It was striking to them. There is no theory at this moment that I know of. There's only the beginning of an investigation, so it would be wrong to surmise. But it was an extraordinary, in the worst sense of the word, an extraordinarily horrible fire, both in terms of its intensity and the 5 lives that were lost. We'll have more to say on that as the investigation continues. Yes, Jillian.
Mayor, there's a group called Tax Equity Now New York that's going to file a class action lawsuit against the Department of Finance regarding what they're saying is an inequitable property tax system. You yourself have just recently actually also described inequities within the property tax system. Their suit says it disproportionately taxes people in low income and moderate income neighborhoods, many of them people of color. So I'm curious, since you seem to agree that there's a problem with the system, is there any thought towards settling the suit when it's filed, if you agree with the premise of?
I have not seen any details of this theoretical lawsuit. It's not the way to solve the problem through a lawsuit. The courts aren't the place to settle this. Some of this has to be handled at the city level as a matter of city policy. Some of this has to be handled at the state level. A lot of taxation, as you know, is determined by the state. What I have pledged to do, and it will be a very major undertaking, is pull together all the stakeholders and set us on a path to reform. It's going to be a very tough and complicated process. And we can't fundamentally change the revenue that we're receiving from our property taxes. So it's going to be, here's the pie, how do you rework the pie while still achieving the same outcome? How do you make it more consistent, more transparent? We're willing to work with anyone to get that done, as long as everyone understands it will be a long and sober and difficult process. But putting it into the court system, that's not the way to make decisions, first of all, and also guarantee you that will be years and years of litigation that won't result in anything anytime soon. So we're committed to doing it, but let's do it the right way through the legislative process.
You know, I mean, people have been talking about this for years. It hasn't happened. You talked about it in 2014 when you came into office. It hasn't happened yet. Do you think that, you know, I mean, that's taken years and years as well. Do you think that people deserve to know? You've now said you'll look at it after re-election. I guess, why didn't you do it during the first term? And do you think people deserve to know before they go to the polls what your plan might be and whether it might cost them more or less in property tax?
I think people should understand the core ground rules of what I'm trying to do, and I think that's important, that we're going to end up with essentially the same total revenue, that we're going to create more consistency and transparency. There's no way I could give them the outline of the plan today because I think it's going to take a year or two to develop. We didn't do it because we had to work on a lot of other priorities that were crucial and necessary and available to be acted on versus this, which I knew would be a very involved, difficult process that would take the energies of our budget director, our first deputy mayor, our finance commissioner, and a whole lot of other people. This is going to be a huge, huge effort. So anyone who promises a quick fix is not telling the truth. This one's exceedingly thorny, and it has to be navigated. You know, the pieces that can be decided administratively and legislatively at the city level, plus the pieces that have to be decided in Albany. That's a very careful balance that has to be struck. So I'm telling people I'm going to do it, and if you look at my batting average of what I say I'm going to do, I do what I say I'm going to do, and they can rest assured I'm not happy with the situation. I think it's something that has to be addressed. But it's not realistic to address it this term. Right now, there's an election coming up. I don't take that for granted. I've got to do all I can to get our current initiatives to deepen. You know, my guarantee, my term of employment is till December 31st. So while I have that, I'm going to make sure everything possible can get done, gets done. I also have to go out to the people and talk about a vision for the future. That takes a lot of time and energy too. That's not surprising. But this will get done. It'll be very difficult, but it will get done.
Some people have to pay more, some people will pay less. I mean, is that...
As a theoretical point, if you're going to rework the entire system, yeah, there will be changes. But it's anyone who starts to assume is on a fool's errand. So again, this is the caution. I get you guys like to take respectfully a quote and project upon it. It would be a mistake to do that. This is going to be a long, careful examination to figure out what's fair. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, major new announcement today, pre-K for all. You took every question that we wanted to ask on that topic. Don't virtually all policy announcements deserve the opportunity for that back and forth for those questions? Thinking just Saturday, you had the green jobs announcement on Staten Island, the e-waste announcement. No questions allowed. Don't policy announcements necessitate that opportunity?
Look, we're doing things the way we think makes sense, and I think in the end we're just going to have to agree to disagree. In a given week, we do these kind of press conferences. I do different TV and radio shows. I did one of the national shows this last week, or two actually. I did Jorge Ramos as well as CNN. I'm going to be talking to people in all sorts of venues, but we have to organize things the way we think makes sense. Any questions you have, you're going to get answers from the press office and from other leaders of the administration, or you can ask me when you're around me. But this is the way we're organizing things, and we think it makes sense. Okay, Rich, and what, Yoav, then Rich.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, so...
What, Yoav, then Rich. Is your name Yoav now? Is your name Yoav now?
No, it does not. Middle name.
Okay, the truth comes out.
You spoke to a caller on the radio show Friday who had concerns about the homeless shelter that's coming into Crown Heights. And and you insisted that the folks who were going to be sheltered there would be from the community, but the group of advocates that's suing over that site is pointing to court records that were submitted by the administration that say that only 1/3 of the residents are going to be from Bed-Stuy and Crown Heights together. So I'm wondering, that came from your administration.
The whole system, look, we also, you are a smart person. We are in a transitional moment. Every shelter is being reoriented to being community-based. The community board it's in, and we've said, initially we're going to do surrounding areas too, because it takes a while to rebalance the whole system. So I've said it a whole lot of times. We start with borough, and then we're working our way from borough to more and more local, ideally, literally, to people being in the community board they come from. That won't happen overnight. But that is the vision for that shelter and every other shelter. It's as simple as that.
You told that caller she had her facts wrong. She was claiming people weren't going to be from that community, and in fact, it looks like 2/3 of them.
Yeah, I'll let the deputy mayor and the commissioner speak to. I'm not going to take your interpretation of the court records. I'll let them speak to what the mix is in the community. But my point to the caller was, she was respectfully, she was ignoring this plan and this vision, and her argument not only ignored the vision, but ignored the need to serve people in need in a way that's being done very carefully. These are 62-year-old and over people. I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to buy people coming up with all sorts of wonderful reasons why they should not serve people in need in their community. Everyone should, everyone will. Go ahead, Rich.
Mr. Mayor, so although you say you don't take your election for granted, a lot of people think it's a fait accompli given the competition and the kind of everything you have kind of going for you at this point. And you did mention the presidential election of 2020. And I'm wondering whether there's any glimmer of hope in your mind that you might be one of the candidates running.
Yeah, I think your question is, respectfully, doesn't make a lot of sense. If I just told you I'm trying to win this election and I don't take it for granted, my feet are fully on the ground. This is what we're focused on. And you know what? You can prognosticate all you want, not you personally, but one can. Anyone who takes an election for granted gets paid back for it, in my opinion. So this is what we're doing. Thank you, everyone.